Hello and welcome to this video. Today I wanted to show you one of my games, a game that I played in 2016 in a tournament in Warsaw. My opponent was Maciej Klejny, and this game is a very interesting one because it illustrates a couple of motifs that we as club players often get wrong. For example, how to block the attacking pawns on the side of the board. So let's have a look. The game started as the Sicilian defense, and I was playing with the black pieces. And here we have the closed Sicilian. So white is not trying to play a quick d4 move. Instead opts for a more quiet development here in with the move d3. That is why it's called closed Sicilian. So my favorite system used to be the fianchetto system with the bishop coming to g7, controlling the long diagonal. Then at some point after all the pieces, or most of the pieces are developed, black would play the rook to b8 and start pushing pawns on this side of the board and trying to generate counterplay here. So let's have a look. Bishop g7, now bishop to e3, d6, protecting the pawn that was under attack. And now white plays the move queen to d2. What's the idea behind this move? Well, creating this typical battery with the queen and the bishop. White is eagerly waiting for black to move the knight away, say typically to f6, because then he can just put the bishop on h6 and exchange off black's dark squared bishop, which would significantly weaken black's kingside. Knight c6, continuing with the development. I cannot develop this knight yet because of what we had just talked about, so I developed the other knight instead. Bishop to e2, and now my plan, rook to b8. I just want to push those pawns on the queen side, and once the knight is chased away and those pawns also may be undermined, this diagonal opens and I have some counterplay. So that's my plan. Very simple. And closed Sicilian opening for black is actually quite simple. It obviously not always works out because if white plays well, it will not work out. You are not going to win right from the opening, but it's a simple plan, easy to understand, easy to play. Okay, white plays a4. This move controls the b5 square and for a moment prevents my move pawn to b5. And this is a very interesting moment. This is exactly the moment I wanted to showcase. So how do you stop a pawn storm, the attack with pawns on the side of the board? So here, black is planning a pawn storm with b pawn and a pawn. And the white decided to stop it by typical idea, putting the pawn on a4, controlling the square that my pawns wants to go to. Now, I played with the move a6. I am insisting on playing b5. And now, if white really wanted to stop my plan, he could have played pawn to a5. Well, not at this point because I control this square twice, so this pawn would be lost. But in other circumstances, putting the pawn here on a5 would essentially prevent black forever going for b5. Now, white decided to make his own pawn storm on the other side of the board. And now it's an interesting moment again. So just a second ago, white prevented my pawn storm by putting the pawn on a4. Now it's my turn to stop white's pawn's aggression. How do I stop this pawn from marching forward, destroying my pawn structure and opening the h-file for the rook? I could play the move h5 myself, but then this would invite g4 and white's attack would continue. And all in all, the h-file would have been opened. I decided for a different method. And this is a very interesting method, maybe slightly well known than this typical idea. I played the move h6. And now after white plays h5, g5. This is maybe slightly more risky at times, but please notice what I have achieved. I have essentially blocked the h file forever. No matter what white can do, this h file is closed, which gives me some relative safety for a moment to my king. White wants to do something on this wing anyway, plays a f4, and yes, he breaks down my pawn structure here, my pawn chain, but please notice, the h file remains closed, so this rook on h1 is not going anywhere and is not threatening my king. Okay, let's carry on our analysis. Bishop h4 takes f4, and now finally, because this pawn is protected by the bishop and the rook, I can finally develop this knight. Knight f6. White develops his knight. Knight to f3. I develop my bishop, the last minor piece that wasn't developed yet. And white plays knight to h4, immediately challenging my bishop. The bishop is protected by the knight, so I for a moment ignore this idea, and I play e6. This move is very useful because it stops the knight from coming to f5, which would be very annoying. White decides to exchange the light square bishop. I take back with the knight. White played queen to e2, attacking my knight. Now the knight has to go away. I cannot protect it because of this pin. So I played the move knight g to e5. And white played queen to e3. Centralizing the queen, possibly putting some question to my pawn should my bishop move anywhere. And I put my knight on this juicy square on d4. So now this knight is actually quite dangerous. It threatens a deadly fork, forking pretty much everything in white's camp. So obviously white cannot allow this. The c2 point must be defended. And white decided to defend it with the king. King to d2. It's probably a good move because castling kingside was no longer a good option. Castling queenside would also be very risky in view of my pawns coming here. So leaving the king in the center, relatively safe behind these pawns, is probably a good option. I decided to go for an attack, b5. Move that probably was slightly too hasty, but eventually it worked out. So white got a bit scared of my plans. He was kind of afraid of me pushing the pawn to c4, wanted to overprotect this pawn as well. But you know what? I played the move c4 anyway. If you analyze this game with the engine, it will tell you that c4 is a mistake. But it's a mistake that actually turned out well for me. Because, you know, even if this move is not exactly accurate or correct, it's a move that puts a lot of questions to the white player. It's a move that basically asks, what are you going to do? I'm attacking your king and I'm creating some serious threats. You need to defend properly and accurately, which is not always easy to do, especially under pressure of the game. You are sitting at the over the board across to your opponent. The clock is ticking. It's not easy to find the best defense. And this is where white made a mistake. He played b takes c4. The proper correct way of playing, let me just show you this variation. The correct way of playing here, believe it or not, was to play queen takes on d4. Obvious, of course. Black has now this deadly discovery, winning the queen. But it will come at a great cost. Let's have a look. Knight f3, check. Knight takes f3, bishop takes queen, knight takes bishop, b4, knight goes back. Now e5, forking the bishop and the knight. And at the end of the day, white has 2 knights for the queen, but still this would have been better than what happened in the game. So let's go back and have a look. After b takes c4, I have the move b takes c4. The pressure is mounting on white. My next couple of moves is gonna be put the rook on b2, if allowed. I am also threatening to take here and then put my knight here. There's a lot there's a lot going on. Keep in mind also I want to open this diagonal that my knights are blocking. All of this was not to white's liking, so quite understandably he played bishop takes to on e5, eliminating one of my knights and trying to simplify things a bit. It's a good, generally speaking, it's a good principle. When you are under attack, if you exchange of pieces, then the attack will be less dangerous. I took back, and white played the pawn to g3. Now, how do you continue the attack as black? As mentioned before, what we want to do is we want to put the rook on the second rank. This is what we've done. And we are putting tremendous pressure now, again, on this weak spot on c2. It's attacked by the rook and by the knight. How should white defend it? Well, putting the rook. This is the only defense, really. Can you see a beautiful attacking move? Knight to b3 check. Again, utilizing the theme of a pinned defender. This pawn is pinned to the king and cannot capture the knight. So by making this check, we fork the king and the rook. King goes away, and this is another important moment of the game. You have given a check. Now should you cash in and take the exchange? No. Whenever you see a good move, look for the better one, right? Bishop takes c3. We win the piece, the minor piece instead. But you may say, hang on a minute, cannot white just take the knight and material is equal? For a moment. But now you have this move, rook to d2 check. And this move is crushing. White cannot step out of the check, because if he does, then we have this beautiful discovered check, taking the queen next. So white decided to give away the queen on his own terms. He took the rook, and now after bishop takes d2, king takes d2, black is up the queen for a knight and a rook. So material is slightly better. Keep in mind, a queen looks great, but a queen is worth, roughly speaking, 9 points. The rook and the knight are worth 8 points. So it's only as if I was up 1 pawn. So things are not so clear yet. We still need to be very careful how we play this. Taking the pawn on b3. White goes quick immediately after the pawn. We try to complicate matters by pinning this rook, so white cannot take the pawn yet. The other rook comes to play, and now it's time to somehow include our own rook in the game. Castling is not attractive anymore, so again, putting the king in the center in the view of incoming endgame is a good idea. And now rook takes b3, and we intend to exchange a pair of rooks. 2 rooks combined together are quite powerful, so exchanging off one of them is a reasonable way of playing this position. So the exchange happens, and we get 1 pawn. So black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns against white's 4. And we have a queen against the knight and the rook. So it's like we are up 2 pawns. But winning this game won't be easy. We have to still be careful. Queen a5. Now, the benefit of having a queen in such a position is that it can easily shuffle from one side of the board to the other. And each time it does so, it creates problems for the other player. That's basically what I was trying to do here. I didn't have a clear plan in mind how to win this position. All I knew is that I want to probe white's position here and there, hoping to create some weaknesses. Okay, the pawn was attacked, it has to be defended. Okay, let's harass this rook. E takes d5, queen takes d5, and now white played the move knight to d4. Okay, let's try to probe white's position even more. Queen to g5, check. Where should the king go? Goes to f3. Okay, now the queen can slide inside white's position and attack this pawn. Okay, white played the check with the knight. King goes to d6. A very useful move. Please notice that now the king attacks the knight, so the rook's movement is limited. White tries to bring the king closer to the center and tries to contain everything together, but now this allows a nice finish. Queen to e2, check. King goes to f4, and now e5, check. King goes to f5. Obviously the pawn could not be taken because we would take it back and that would lose the knight. Now queen to h5, check. King to e4, queen e2, king f5. And now after this little repetition of moves, I have finally found the right plan. Queen f3, check. And now white resigned because of he has to lose the rook, not to be mated. The only move now is to play rook to f4, and after pawn takes f4, we are simply having a queen against a knight, and this game will be over pretty soon. So that was the game. I hope that you have found it interesting. And regarding the different moments of this game, I'm very curious, what do you think about this? Especially about those pawn storms. How do you respond when you are facing a pawn storm by your opponent? What's your way of stopping the danger? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you, and see you in the next video.